Welcome to Worse Than the Borg. This mission log was recorded on Treaty 13 land, and the participants are committed to reconciliation here on Earth. We believe the United Federation of Planets would fully support the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. All tuned-in Terrans are encouraged to participate in the direct action discussed later in this log. Hello, welcome to Worse Than the Borg. I'm Captain Shane Holland. I am here with Commander Ron Sly. Hello, Ronnie.
Oh.
And Chief Engineer Ravi Joshi. Hello, Ravi.
How are you doing?
I am feeling fine. I'm fantastic. I am so excited to talk about the first episode of Season 3 of Discovery with you folks. And I am very excited to welcome aboard this week's special guest, Ambassador Kat Abrams. Hi, Kat.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So we're here to talk about Star Trek. I myself am a huge Star Trek nerd. I am probably the biggest Star Trek nerd out of all of my friends. I've been watching these shows since I was about 5 years old. So that's nearly 30 years. It's been a long relationship with this franchise. How about you folks? Ronnie, what's your relationship with Star Trek?
I started watching Star Trek in high school, so probably around 1999, and that puts me about 20 years. I definitely don't have quite as much knowledge as Shane, but I think most normal humans out there would consider me a super fan. Ravi?
I could claim the same amount of time approximately, although I don't remember whether it was late high school or early university, but I just want everyone to know that I have my own Star Trek Jean-Luc Picard action figure, which sits by my work every day. This is an audio show, so you'll just have to take it that I'm putting it there. And famously, I was once rejected by my boss when I requested to take a fact-finding mission of the Star Trek Discovery when on its lot in the Portlands in Toronto. I was rejected for that request. So that's as credible as it gets.
I am both jealous and furious for you.
Exactly.
And Kat, please. So part of this show is that we invite someone who doesn't necessarily know as much about Trek as we three hosts do. So Kat, you are our lucky first ambassador. Could you please tell us your experience with Star Trek?
Sure. I come from a family of Star Trek lovers. My parents and my brother, and now his wife as well, my sister-in-law. So I have watched a lot of Star Trek, but it's never really been something that I have been pulled towards to watch on my own. But I enjoy the show. It's something that I've always, I don't keep up with it. So this was kind of fun to watch it again. I feel like if you have a general idea of the episodes and the style of the show, then you can kind of jump in and enjoy something. Like, I enjoyed the episode that we're going to talk about today. So
that is so good to hear, because I also really enjoyed this episode.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so action-packed. We all recently watched The Cage, and while that was a great episode of Star Trek, this was an amazing episode. This was
my God.
like, from the moment it opened to the moment it ended, I was gripping my seat. Sonequa Martin Green is a living legend, and we should treat her as such. She does an incredible job in this episode. And this series has just come so far from its humble beginnings.
Dark beginnings.
Yes, quite dark beginnings.
Like, how have we gotten into the apocalypse and somehow things feel more hopeful and nice?
I mean, isn't that kind of where we're at in the real world? And they wrote this before any of that happened. Star Trek knows. They're always ahead of the curve.
They're always there.
So, I mean, maybe we should think about jumping right in, but I think first we'll take a very quick commercial break. We'll let the cat out and then take a quick commercial break.
sorry, she'll make the door rattle if I don't let her in.
We are back, and let's get right to it. We've already talked about cats in the break, and we are going to be talking about a lot more cats with Kat. So, this episode of Star Trek Discovery, Season 3, Episode 1, That Hope Is You, Part 1. It was directed by Olatunde Osunsanmi and written by Michelle Paradis and Jenny Lumet and Alex Kurtzman, the series showrunner. Michael Burnham arrives suddenly in the year 3188 after traveling through a wormhole at the end of season 2 of Discovery, where she crashes into Cleveland Booker's ship, and the two of them land on the planet Hema. Burnham teams up with Book for help in locating the Discovery. It is here that she learns that warp travel has become a rare luxury after an event called the Burn, when all dilithium in the galaxy suddenly exploded, killing millions on board starships. Book and Burnham travel to the city of Requiem, run by the Orion and Andorian crime syndicates, where Book betrays Burnham, but is himself double-crossed. The two escape together, and Book's mysterious cargo devours their pursuers. With some rare and stolen dilithium, they travel to one of the last remaining Starfleet outposts in the galaxy, where they continue their search for the missing USS Discovery. And let's start right off with a bird alarm clock and some really cool science fiction that I had never imagined.
I loved the alarm clock. Oh my God.
I put that in my notes.
That's
One of my first my first note after the previously on where I saw Tig Notaro, who I did not know was in the show. My first note was, oh my God, Tig. And then my second note is parrot alarm clock, I want.
I want it too, really bad.
And one that changes color every day. Like, how surprising would that be? You're not only waking up to a virtual bird with a time on it, but it's changing every day. That's so insightful. That'd be lovely.
Also,
and
can this alarm clock be something other than a bird? Can your alarm clock be a cat? I want my cat to be my alarm clock.
My
current alarm clock is a cat, so.
Yeah. We're in the future already.
Yeah, and I mean, that guy was all Star Trek fans for 12 years, waking up every day, nothing changing, no news, nothing exciting, until finally this Sonequa Martin Green showed up in our screens, and
that's a great take. That's a great take.
She shows up later and saves him, but we'll get there.
He does sort of embody the ethos when he went later in the episode of all Star Trek fans. You're totally right about that. It's just so perfect.
This opening was just so intense. We start in a space battle. Michael Burnham just instantly appears and causes a scene. This new mysterious character is being chased by a space orc. So much happening. I'm so confused. What did you all think of this opening battle sequence?
It's arguably what should have been the opening sequence for The Cage, the slowest episode of Star Trek ever. This is the kind of, starting off with a mysterious, like seemingly disjointed guy waking up from his sleep, and you don't know what it's about. It creates this discomfort and then puts you right into the action. It's exactly what every episode, well, maybe not every episode, you gotta pace it a little bit, but most Star Trek episodes, this is where you want it to start off with, because you're completely enthralled and wired up and ready to go, and it was a delight.
I mean, apart from your classic cliffhanger season opener two-parter, this is a great way to start a Star Trek season. Also, 3188, this is 930 years in the future from where we left off in the last season, and it's still 870 years in the future from where we leave off in Picard. Sorry, 780 years in the future from where we leave off in Picard. So we are just eclipsing so far forward from what we know in the Star Trek universe that everything feels new. Although I love the little touches that remind us that it's the same universe. We know that the man in the opening scene is in the Federation. It's very obvious. There's some iconography in there that keys us in. So it's nice that these touches still exist, but everything still feels really fresh.
I was glad to hear you say that this is the future, that none of us have seen this before, because I have no concept of what time the season took place in, and how that it's related to 3188. So
this is all a vacuum for you, is what
yeah,
you're saying.
I was like, what should I be expecting technology wise? Are we all on board with what's happening? Is everybody surprised? So I just kind of took it all in stride, but I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, it's so far in the future that basically nothing matters except the universe that they've created there, which I
arguably how Discovery should have been tackled in the very beginning. A lot of fans wanted Discovery to not be set in a timeline that we were very familiar with, and so they actually listened and took the concept and just transported it into a bizarre new future.
Yeah, and it's actually this episode is a great re-entry point for anybody, like somebody like Kat, or like you can call me Kat if you feel this way, but it's still the content, but you don't have to know. You didn't even have to watch the first 2 seasons of Discovery, really. Gives some context, but really it's a whole new thing. It makes it very clear what she's trying to accomplish in finding her ship, but you don't even need to know anything about that ship. It's all new.
It was wonderful to see Michael Burnham kicking ass so soon into the episode. As soon as she gets out of that angel suit, she is immediately in a brawl with this new character whose name we find out is Book, who I am immediately in love with. Book is a wonderful character. We love seeing characters who are imperfect in Star Trek because so many of the characters are made to be perfect. It's great when people have instant flaws, and and also he's just like a super gorgeous man, and I'm happy to be looking at him every episode for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see where they take the character, and we can talk about later on, what his backstory ends up being. But I do just want to note that crash landing that Burnham has, and then that joyous release that she has when she realizes that she's not alone on the planet. We have been waiting for, Kat, you might not really know this, but her character in the previous 2 seasons, she grew up on Vulcan, so she represses a lot of her emotions, thinks logically, and has been through some very tough stuff. And to see her just be happy for a moment was a release for the series up to this point. And then of course she runs into a man who wants nothing to do with her, which is maybe an allegory for a lot of the Star Trek fandom, unfortunately.
I don't want to know any of you.
That was.
Can I just go ahead?
Oh, go ahead.
No, it's you. You're the guest.
I was just going to say the fact that Book didn't want her to introduce herself for so long was a problem for me. I was like, "What is your name?" I don't know you either. So it was
man friend
when she finally said her name.
He was really quick to give out his number, though. What was that all about?
Typical.
Can he just have not been, and we're skipping a little bit ahead, but could he just have not been an environmentalist? I would have really loved his flaws if they stuck for more than 15 minutes, because then all of a sudden he's saving a whale or a slug or whatever that thing is, and then he's taking off his shirt, and then he's all like, "Oh, I was just trying to return it to this conservation area." They skipped way too quickly to that. I wanted to. He could have had this Han Solo smuggler with a heart of gold type thing going on, and then he's just barely a smuggler, mostly a heart of gold. So a little bit of a knock there. They could have stretched that out for a couple episodes of the season. They could have, built up to it, but they were like, "No, he's perfect. He's just perfect."
Maybe if the series still had 24 episode long seasons, we could definitely do that. But there's only 12. We've got to get to the point.
And I'm dying to figure out what Bizarro universe the evil version of him will be, because he's got to be, a poacher, but he comes from a family of environmental conservationists. The whole. See, there's a lot there, but it would be cool to see him as an actually seedy person, because he pretty quickly went, "I'm actually pretty cool."
Yeah, by the way, I'm perfect. I hate to disappoint, but
sorry about that. I can speak to plants.
How about the gorgeous locations of this episode? So the first 6-day shoot of the season was spent in Iceland. Iceland is all of the outdoor scenes on the planet Hema, before they moved back to their home of Pinewood Studios, Toronto. And you know, we live and work in Toronto, so we are all very familiar with the sites. And I don't know about the rest of you, but in the past seasons of Discovery, I am specifically looking out for places I know, and they show up. And so it was actually really refreshing to see what did feel like an alien landscape in Star Trek. They rarely shoot outside of the United States. So to see, yeah, the crazy Icelandic countryside was really beautiful.
Yeah, I thought it was real gorgeously shot. And I mean, the whole episode, the CGI in space, the time dilation effects, the you know, when Burnham sees the city for the first time and it's lit up like you know, you might expect that, like an outpost like that, like seedy but exciting, and the look on her face was the look on my face. It was just so gorgeously constructed.
Jonathan Frakes says the directorial style required for Discovery is shoot to thrill, and they definitely hit the mark. Olatunde, the director of this episode, definitely shoots to thrill.
Yeah, I noted when I was watching it that it's much more cinematic than I remember Star Trek being. But again, I haven't watched it since I lived with my parents. I watched TNG and Voyager. Those are the ones. I haven't really watched Star Trek since the 2001, I guess. So this was like a movie, and it was very beautiful. The locations, obviously, but the market that they do. My first thought was like, this is the market. This is Blade Runner. This looks just like
yeah,
looks just like Blade Runner.
Yeah, Mos Eisley meets Blade Runner. Yeah,
it kind of looked like Pacific Mall.
Yes, it might.
My partner and I, that's right. My partner and I went to Pacific Mall recently during COVID. It is empty. It is empty. And wow. There could have well been a shooting location, but it's all the glass, you know, all the glass, different locations where they were storing dilithium crystals. They might have been storing, you know, fixer-up cell phones. It was like, I mean, Pacific Mall could have been there.
I'm sure Pacific Mall has been in an episode of Discovery or two.
Oh, wouldn't that be fun?
We didn't talk about the opening credits, and we don't really need to accept that Star Trek Discovery has a new logo this season, and it really reflects that it takes place in a new time and place, where the old one felt a bit more rustic, I'm going to say. The old one was inspired by the war with the Klingons, whereas this new one was supposed to invoke a fresh, new, unexplored feeling of Star Trek. I like that little tidbit of information. The production really pays close attention to all details on these episodes, I find. And also,
what did you think, Kat?
I love the opening credits. I thought they were beautiful looking. I had not seen the preview, so but yeah, the art was great.
It was pretty similar. I didn't catch all of the I knew it was updated, but I'm gonna have to give it another watch because I didn't see.
I can't wait for my second watch. And we also talked about the movie quality of this episode. Immediately following this first viewing, I watched Cats in a watch party with some friends, and that movie should have been on TV, and this TV show should have been a movie. Like, the difference in quality of the CGI between those two properties was mind-blowing.
I watched this on a streaming service that had, there's such a coincidence because it had the Cats movie poster like promoting while I was trying to flip through and find this episode, and and I was like, how are they going to hype up Cats? And they were like, watch the movie that sent the internet ablaze. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's how you do it. I guess that's okay.
Mine, for me, Cats showed up under the category of when you need a reason to laugh. So they really know who they're marketing that movie towards.
And I also say that the promotional graphic that they did, there's a poster you can find of this, and it has Michael Burnham with a Federation star flag with all the characters who have yet to show up, I should add, heroically looking over rocks. It was so cool. Just that alone is just so cool. You want to watch this season. You got to give them credit for all the way they put this season and this episode together.
100%.
At the end of the last season, did we know that she was going to jump time or be separate from her crew?
Yes.
A little bit of both.
Okay.
She was creating a wormhole that they would all go through time, to kind of reset some events in the universe that they were leaving. But I don't think that they were expecting to be separated on the other side, which is what happened. So after we show up at Requiem, Burnham gets totally she gets taken by this Andorian and this Orion syndicate member, and they get her high, and it's like she's smoked a ton of pot and done a hit of poppers, and all of a sudden she just can't stop talking. What a great performance from Sonequa Martin in this
And
sequence.
that's like a performance that you can truly screw up, right? Like we've all seen films, and there's probably Star Trek moments where just drunk, you're bad acting.
Yeah, bad drunk acting can be the worst acting.
But we finally, like, her acting in the early seasons was really understated because she had this Vulcan inner dialogue going on, and we saw her release a bit just 5 minutes earlier, and then it's the total release. Like, everything just comes spewing out, and she's like dying to talk to somebody about what she's been through. And I wrote down, it's a super cool story. It's just in a completely devastating way. Like,
yeah.
She's like processing this all through this like drug experience, and I just thought that it was so much fun to watch.
And they pulled off a fight scene with one of the characters being like, this is not trivial. Like, how to pull off a fight scene, getting her reactions to everything, and just like you're at this, you're gripped tight because everything's happening and it's really intense. But then you're just like dying laughing in between the laser shots. It was so joyous, so wonderful to watch this.
Truly really fun. Plus, so much is happening in the background of this scene. We see like portable transporters, which is brand new for all of us. Usually, if anything, we're used to maybe an emergency transport, but to just like transport wherever, whenever you want. What a cool concept. I cannot believe that we haven't done this in Star Trek yet. Plus, there's so many aliens in the city of Requiem. It reminded me a lot of Deep Space Nine. In fact, we see, I'm blanking on the name of the alien species, but the character that Morn is from Deep Space Nine, a character who sits at the bar and doesn't say a word, we see one of them, which we never see in Star Trek. And then, so Burnham and Book shoot their way out of there. They get back to Book's ship, and Book reveals his massive secret cargo, which is a trance worm, which is a little like the Hypnotoad from Futurama, except that it eats aliens for breakfast. So disgusting for a Star Trek scene.
It doesn't seem to care what it eats. It will eat anything that gets in its way. Is that not? Because it ate other things as well.
It seems to be pretty indiscriminate. Having not seen Dune, did it not remind you of the Dune slug? Like, I've not really seen that, but I know that a Dune slug exists. Is that like, is this a crossover?
Is this a crossover? Is a lot bigger. This is more of a like
a baby slug.
Predator.
It's a baby slug.
I feel like space worm is a tried and true concept.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You can't go wrong.
Why were they calling it a trans worm?
Trance, as in like you fall into.
Trance.
That's why he said don't look at it when.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not the Ark of the Covenant.
They did a particularly long shot on the Andorian, and their eyes were blue, and it's like, that might have been a choice you could have made differently, is to like have a long shot on some other character, because I didn't fully register that the alien whose eyes are normally blue was in a trance because
they were bluer.
They're blue.
Yeah.
You do briefly see a farther back shot where all of their eyes are kind of glazed out. But
can we talk about the aliens? Because I'm used to 90s aliens, which are kind of, I don't know, grubby looking. These aliens were very bright and kind of soft looking. The Andorian, the blue guy, I thought he was like straight, and the green guy too. What's he?
Orion.
Yeah, they looked straight out of Series 1. Like they looked like
they are Series
not
1.
Very realistic.
They are One of my common complaints is that we never really see some of the species after they get introduced, and some of them were Andorians. Basically, didn't make an appearance again until Star Trek Enterprise, which I never watched. Don't tell anyone.
Oh.
And the Orions, we've only ever seen Orion women, and they're usually called Orion slave women. So it's a bit of a problematic trope. So to see an Orion male, I was like, oh wow, this feels so. It ties back into the original series. It feels fresh somehow. It was very exciting to see.
So Shane, the fact that you haven't seen Enterprise is important here because they
Yes.
retconned the Orions in that, and the women are actually using their pheromones to control the men. And so the men go out and do all of the dangerous work for the women who get to stay home and like have sex with whoever they want.
Oh, fun! Like a matriarchy. I love
Yeah,
it.
so they turned that upside down. But I love that, Kat, you picked that out because they are like the old school type aliens, and they try to modernize the makeup. But I did think like just the green on this guy was so bright.
Yeah, iridescent.
Yeah.
If we could jump back to season 2, where they have the bar scene with the Orion and an actor by the name who I just looked up, Clint Howard, and he plays this sort of gangly Orion who gets Tilly high. Spoiler alert. That was an interesting. First of all, that actor, it turns out, shows up throughout Star Trek. But that was also interesting because that might have been the first time I saw a male Orion, and he was sort of. It kind of built out the universe in a little way. So it was it was interesting in this episode to see somebody who's in uniform playing a sort of a member of the outfit. But they're slowly going to, there's more to be had with the Orion character set. There's going to be something that goes on in the future episodes that kind of builds out that universe even more. You can tell that they're kind of building towards it.
Yeah, it feels that way.
And in the other series that's going on right now, Kat, Lower Decks, I don't think you watched it, but there is a female Orion character who is not involved in the mafia aspect of that race. And she's a science officer and is really cool. So and they do a callback where she's like being painted as a person from this culture, and she like puts her foot down and says, no, it's like not who I am. So it's cool that they're still playing with all of these old original ideas and maybe just doing it in a better way.
Yeah.
What do we know that what species book is? Are we just to assume he's human, or we don't know yet?
I don't think we know. We can assume that he's a humanoid that has either gained powers from the planet that they've been living on for centuries, or have developed them beside the humanity that we know. That's usually how Star Trek goes. You either colonize a place, or you're from a species who looks exactly like humans.
And Burnham, she is a human that was raised on Vulcan, or she?
Correct.
Right.
Okay, got it.
He's Spock's sister.
Book is from the species smoking hot, like that. Like that's he's in a different category.
Yes, exactly.
Totally.
We learn to never shoot at the giant monster, and that's when it eats everyone. We wish we hadn't destroyed that angel suit when we can't get off the planet, and when we find out that there is no warp capability anymore. Warp drive has basically become extinct. What a twist for this series. And it's such a reflection of the world we are living in now, where we've all become so fractured, and the nations of our planet are becoming so closed off and segregationist, and the universe and the Star Trek universe is now reflecting that. And I think that's going to be a very timely issue for them to delve into over the course of this season, and see how they kind of bring the band back together again, in a sense.
Yeah, so I guess we can kind of get into like the almost puritanical approach that Burnham has to the Starfleet ideals. That she's like, it's what this world needs, I think, is what she is going to be said. And she's almost, one of the only ones. Everybody else has kind of, been through 200 years of disaster. So, they've been through the temporal wars, which we knew was coming from Voyager, and then like fortunately we've gone past that. And in very Star Trek way, they're just like, oh, we're not going to use that technology anymore. But the fracturing of the societies and the culture, like I am interested to see what they do, because the Starfleet got its abilities from its ability to travel around and perform diplomacy and help people out. And when you're only have the thruster technology, how far are they actually going to get to go? Are they just in this system for the entire season?
Well, let's not forget that the USS Discovery has a ship that doesn't travel through warp, but through a mycelial network. I have a feeling this is going to play into some future episodes, in fact.
Right, but so they stopped using the mycelial network because it was damaging the
oh, right.
the web, or what, the mycelia. And this is kind of bringing us to, like, in the Next Generation, if you remember, they started to go into where
the environmental impact of
environmental impact
technology.
And so they've and book says something kind of halfway through, like, you destroyed 2 light years of subspace or something just to like come through here, so
what was that all about? Because he said that, and then it was almost as if he was referring to the traffic that the gossip created. Like, what was he going? Because he said there was some carry-on part of that sentence where he was just like, "Yeah, did you?" And and everyone was talking about it, and so it was almost as though subspace is at like it's a limited bandwidth, and people gobbled it up talking about it. I didn't actually fully understand that, but it sounded like it was more than just an environmental message. It was like a gossip message, maybe. The 23rd century version of Twitter, I think, is what created all these problems.
That, of course.
But I mean, maybe like from your perspective, Kat, like, does any of that even matter? Like, we've gone, like last night I drew the map of the galaxy for Alex, and like, Alpha and Beta Quadrant is kind of where they were, and where Deep Space Nine linked to in the Gamma Quadrant, and Voyager in the Delta Quadrant, and now we've kind of like fractured it all up, and like none of that really matters. So maybe it just doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, I've never really been able to track where other planets and ships are in relation to the one that we're watching in the series. So it doesn't really matter to me as a casual viewer where they end up. I just know that they're stuck away from whoever they need to find. That's generally the idea I keep in my head.
Yeah.
But my question about this was, I mean, I have a few questions about the very opening when it first lands on the planet. One was, how did she know she could take her helmet off?
Good question.
On a random planet.
I don't know
if there's
really fast.
If there's new technology in Star Trek where everyone can breathe everywhere. I don't know if that thing, but
no.
that was her first move. I was like, what? Shocked by that. And then when she sent her like only technology up into the wormhole before it closed, I don't know what that was about, what the purpose of that was. It seems like when you're stranded somewhere where you know nothing, I would want to hold on to everything that I had with me. So that was a confusing step for me.
Yeah, so that's just like kind of cutting it off from and ending the plot of the previous season, where they were basically tracking that suit around the galaxy, and every time it showed up, they would go and like find a piece of the puzzle, and sending it back is going to be the 7th signal, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're correct. The final piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, so it's the final piece of the puzzle for the people who are back in that time, and so she had to do that to keep the time, like the loop of time, in order.
And mostly to satisfy fanboys who would complain incessantly if they didn't close that plot hole.
Yeah.
And I think the sentimental thing is that she also wanted to, the idea is that 7th signal was her message to Spock. So that was she was doing that as a last ditch effort to tell Spock, her brother, that she was okay.
Yep,
so
right.
It was sort of a nice sentimental thing, but that also jumped out to my partner who was watching this and had forgotten that. Was like, why? That seems strange.
Why would you send the best tool you have away now?
And the suit also contained the AI from the 2nd series. The whole that was the plot device that she was trying to self-destruct it to kind of wrap that up. So that's no longer an existential threat to humanity and sentient life, right? Is that she's destroying it as part of the soup.
She also said something at one point to the book that, I mean, I may have got my wires crossed, but it sounded like she said something along the lines of she was doing something to save everybody, or like what she was doing was in an effort to save the galaxy.
Universe. Yeah.
Yeah, what was that
That's true.
about?
That
The whole threat of the second season was that the AI technology in her suit would eventually run amok and kill everyone, and so in order to stop that from happening, she sends it back and destroys it.
Is that why she was separate from her ship in the first place?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they had to sacrifice. She had to sacrifice herself in flinging herself in the future to save literally all of the entire galaxy. And then behind her is all of the other characters on the season, including Tig.
Tig.
Yeah. They chose to follow her into the wormhole.
Gotcha.
And maybe we're skipping a bit ahead, but wormholes work weird, and so she came out, and you don't know if they're
When
10 minutes behind, or 2 days, or maybe
1,000 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So. But I am gonna guess that they show up pretty soon because they're all in the promotional materials.
And just to wrap up the recap of this episode, we end on, I think, a really lovely, poignant scene where the character that we were introduced to in the very beginning, we learn that he is on one of the last remaining Starfleet outposts in the galaxy. And he's not a Starfleet officer because he was never commissioned, but he comes from a long line of last remaining proud Starfleet officers. And Michael Burnham shows up and says, we're gonna do this thing together, and she commissions him as her chief of communications, and they raise the flag of the much diminished Federation together.
Did I cry? Yes, I did.
Of course.
We all
We all did.
Wow.
This was the first 5 minutes of Up all over again.
I mean, so I like Kat. It got you, even though you didn't have a lot of the backstory pieces. Like, what about it was engaging for you?
Well, I think because I have no concept of the first two series or seasons of this show, I only have this like Federation idea of what Star Trek is. So it made sense to me that someone would be like loyal to this group.
Yeah.
I also love being part of a team.
Yes.
I mean, Starfleet is like just a really fun team, you know, when they're not being paramilitary. But like something that really attracted to me early on is, you know, everybody had really clear defined roles and was working towards, you know, a beautiful ideal. And Burnham, like, being that, like, the heart of it and bringing it so clearly through. After also in the previous season, Starfleet is a big dick to her, personally. So the fact that she still believes in the core after having been through all of that, and finding somebody who, you know, I think again is like the stand-in for the fans who have been like waiting for the moment that we get back to, you know, what the series tries to do, and like the infinite diversity and infinite combinations kind of thing. Even though that's not specifically Starfleet, but I thought it was really touching. I definitely maybe shed a tear as well.
Can I also cite what and there might be an episode where I am mistaken, but a prominent South Asian actor presenting in the Star Trek universe. It's maybe I might be missing a character or two here, but his ethnicity, his Indian accent is strong. He's presented in, granted, sort of a bureaucratic kind of character type, but his character has a lot of dignity. He's not in a service role. And I think so I watched this episode this morning, and it's been on my mind ever since, is I think we can all appreciate when we see people from our backgrounds being represented, from different, you know, non-white presenting backgrounds being presented. And as long as it's happening, your experience that sort of empathetically for other people, it's one experience. Until it's something that hits home, it's a completely different experience. And I completely understand the Star Trek universe in a different way. I can only describe what I saw this morning, this episode, as something that I've never seen before, which is a South Asian actor playing a South Asian character in a prominent role with a lot of clearly meaning and importance. The whole show starts off with him in this sort of cryptic little sequence there, and it was something that I've never. I mean, I guess it shows how rarely this happens. But I can suddenly see what it must have been like to see Uhura on the bridge, or to see Sulu on the bridge, or to see LeVar Burton portraying a person with a prominent disability. I guess we always knew this about Star Trek, that it does this, but until you experience that, seeing your own kind represented in that way, that was truly transformative. That was actually really, really exciting to see. And I feel like I can understand a little bit more about what gets people so excited, because when it's not out there, and pop culture, South Asians are not, I mean, barring like Bollywood and stuff, South Asians are still playing catch up in a lot of regard in terms of portrayal in pop culture, and let alone in portrayals in complex or nuanced characters alongside this. And within a small episode, they really built out that character. I want to learn a lot more about this character. Oh, it's so cool.
I'm so excited about that character.
It's so cool. So I was really proud of the series for doing that. I want to say thank you to the writers and the directors who put this in such a tasteful way. But just to also note the absence of like South Asian characters for the entire series, like it hasn't really happened in a big way.
I think that there is
an admiral, I want to say.
You might be right. You might be right.
Wait, not. I don't want to like take away from that.
Oh yeah.
No,
because I think Rekha Sharma, who played Landry in season 1.
Thank you.
But that speaks to the Star Trek has like a mixed record with representation, especially from a queer lens. They truly haven't done it well ever, and we're hoping that this season will turn around. But and Landry is a great example. It was a completely wasted character. Rekha Sharma was totally underused and was ultimately forgettable. This character at the beginning, who I actually can't remember his name off the top of my head. I don't have it in my notes.
Adil Hussain.
Yeah.
Aditya Sahil.
That's it. The actor. Yep.
The presentation of that person as someone who is like deserving of the deference of the Star Trek fandom, I think, definitely it was a huge moment.
I suppose I certainly don't want to erase Rekha Sharma's contribution to this at all. So
the writers did that for her. So
that's on me. And yeah, she was, I guess, but also in portraying a South Asian accent, I guess is part of this as well. Not hiding away from that. Now, Rekha Sharma, I'm reading, is from Vancouver. All of this makes sense. I'm not dissing anyone, but the prominence of a South Asian character in that way was a special moment for me, because I think it's almost as though his ethnicity was on display a little bit more than some of these characters who sometimes, I'm a white presenting Canadian South Asian person, so I get it. It is the way it is, but in some ways it was just a way of saying it was a way of being seen in a way that I thought was really special, and I really want to put a little note on that and just say that was really, really good. And now I can kind of see how people see these other characters and other racial backgrounds being portrayed in pop culture for the first time. Sometimes it was really, really, really special.
That's so lovely. And actually, it's interesting that we're talking about this, but it's of course we're talking about it because this is actually the first ever episode of Star Trek without a white human character in it, and I didn't even notice until I read that bit of trivia. And
I did notice yesterday. It's so amazing, and like every character in there is either not a man or is not like a man of color or alien, and it's just like fucking finally. Like, sorry, are we swearing on this podcast?
I think
it's too late. I think I already have to.
I think we have to. I'll check off a box when I'm uploading it. I think there's a box to be checked off.
PG-13. We're allowed one. It totally struck me, and yeah, it's powerful, and it's kind of a nice little dig from the writers' room, who have been needled to death by the toxic part of the fandom for making Star Trek Discovery too progressive, as they say. It's not it. The criticism is that this is not a show for white men. And you know what? Star Trek never was a show for white men. Star Trek was a show for everyone. And I really feel that this is one of the first times where, from start to end, it really felt that way.
Absolutely.
I think this brings us to a great point for a little break before we return with our last bit of the show. Welcome back to Worse Than the Borg. We are going to take a moment to direct you, our Terran listeners, to some direct action that you can take to help out in this world now. And I'm going to pass it over to Ronnie, who has a little more information.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. So we are not Starfleet officers, but we can be making an impact in our world today. And right now, as we speak in Canada, the Spaganogany nation in Nova Scotia is being terrorized by settler fishermen and their communities. It's pretty horrible what's happening. We know that the racism exists here, but not so blatant and dangerous and violent as is happening right now. So in the spirit of Starfleet, we're encouraging everyone listening, every Terran out there, to join us in supporting the Spaganogany nation. And we're going to do it in a little Star Trek-y way. Shane's got some trivia for us, and we'll play you the clip. Please send us your guesses either to worsethantheborg@gmail.com, worsethanborg on Twitter, or worsethanborg on Instagram. And one of the people who writes in with the correct answer, next week we will be sending a financial contribution directly to the nation in your name. And we encourage you to do that of your own volition, of course, but would like to invite you to participate with us as well.
Great. So our trivia question for this week is, name at least 5 of the species seen in this episode of Star Trek Discovery. Again, name at least 5 of the species that we see in this episode of Star Trek Discovery, Season 3, Episode 1. And again, you can send your answers to worsethantheborg@gmail.com or worsethanborg on Twitter and Instagram.
We'll also be posting how you can directly send support yourself on our accounts.
Great. And with that, we move on to our next segment entitled What the Trek, in which we get to ask our guest, Kat, what the Trek? What part of this episode or this series or this franchise is so confusing or morally gray that you need us, the experts, to explain to you more?
I feel like I snuck in a lot of questions throughout the previous discussion already. I don't think I have anything hugely overarching, just little things that me understand what I just watched.
Perfect.
The first question I had was about the planet, what planet she was on, how she could breathe. We don't really have an answer for that, do we? There's no technology that allows, I know there's the technology for understanding all the languages. That exists, right?
They also have technology that tells them how livable a planet is. And so one can assume that the technology in her suit also would feed her information about the planet that she was on before she took it off.
Maybe wouldn't even allow her to take it off if it wasn't safe to do so.
Right.
In this case, I think the technology are writers in the writers' room literally waving their hand over a script to make us move on to the next plot item.
Yeah. This is the 3-second rule. If you need more than 3 seconds to explain it, we're just not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Unfortunately, I feel like all the questions I had have been answered throughout the episode / throughout our discussion.
Your life,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, one of the major ones I was wondering the whole time was why she would assume that she could still communicate with ship when she just got shot out of a wormhole. Yep. She seemed very confident the whole time that I just need to find a communicator so I can get in contact with my ship, even though in the first scene, when she lands on the planet, she tries to use her suit to communicate and nothing happens. And then she trusts this stranger who does betray her at one point, Book, to lead her to a communication device that she would then use to get in contact with her ship. As an outside watcher, my first thought was, it's gone. You're so far away from your ship.
They're dead.
Different, it's a different like time zone or whatever space.
Time zone.
Or,
Literally a time zone.
Yeah. Like either it's too far away or it's 1,000 years away, or I don't know why she's so confident that she could just call it up. And when she eventually got the technology, the like in the air comms device from Book, she just kind of, there didn't seem to be much to it. She just pressed one button and it was already calling the ship, and there was no response. There's not even any confirmation that there would not be a response. It wasn't like unable to connect or whatever. It just was dead air. And then she was like, oh, I guess I can't find them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the answer is she keeps going because that hope is you, you know? She's hope personified. She has to believe that they're still out there.
Yeah, I guess it's the plot of the show.
I did think it was a little weird that like she had to be told about the temporal mechanics of wormholes, considering that she has been dealing with temporal stuff for an entire
year.
Yeah. And then it's not until the end where it's like, oh, well, they might not be immediately behind us. That she should have known that, I feel like. Yeah.
And now I'm wondering, because you said she grew up on Vulcan, that's a very logical species. They seem to like think everything through. She seemed a bit naive throughout the episode, and I don't know if that's a character trait that she has already shown, or if it was something, maybe she got a concussion when she landed on the planet, but
she's been developing into it. So like when we first meet Burnham, she's in like full Vulcan regalia. She holds herself like a Vulcan, and throughout the 2 seasons, she kind of learns to loosen up a little bit and tap into the human side. And so like her screaming in joy is a very human thing, and so like we're kind of completing that arc. So it kind of makes sense that she might start to get some of the less desirable human traits going as well during this.
I couldn't tell in the beginning if she was very happy or very sad, and then it became clear that it was a combination of both. Like the first was clearly joy, and then after she was clearly weeping. So, and lots of emotions, I imagine. The other thing I noticed was it almost seemed like she deliberately was not. There was a point where I thought if they could just have a conversation with each other, they could get on the same level. They could get on the same like wavelength of what's happening. But obviously, Book was very persistent in not her say much or getting to know her at all. But immediately he could tell from her equipment, her phaser and her tricorder and stuff, that she was antique equipment. And he said that out loud, but she didn't click for her that meant she was very far in the future. And until she went to his ship and saw all his hands-free stuff. But it seemed like it took too long into the episode for her to realize how far in the future she had traveled. And then at the end, he was like, "Are you a traveler?" And she was like, "Yes, I am." And I was like, you know that. You called her out. She's heard of the burn. She's surprised that this material has exploded and killed a bunch of people.
She hasn't even heard about it.
He has an old, gigantic tricorder. Like when I had, my brother had a tricorder, and it was much nicer looking than what she had.
Probably running an old operating system.
Yeah, hers was gigantic. It was like a brick.
What is this, Windows 2038?
Hold on 1 second. My tricorder's starting up. 1 second.
Yeah. Did you try restarting it?
Well, that was
to her credit, she had a very long day, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know if I would have the wish to
ago.
piece that all together. You're this beautiful scenery, all this stuff. People are shooting at you. I mean, we could cut her a little bit of slack.
I am thinking maybe there was some concussion symptoming after her crash landing.
Yeah.
But I did make a note when she was falling through the sky that she told her suit to do a full system reboot because it wasn't doing anything, and I thought that was very classic.
Did you
even
turn it
in-
off and turn it on?
Yes,
Yeah.
try turning it off and turn it back
Yeah.
on again. That's like excellent.
If
Yeah.
only like everybody that we work with, when they're like, I can't get my computer to work. Like,
Honest to
just
God.
like it's the writer's room directing their parents to turn it off and turn it on again. Because it saves her life.
I also want to know what kind of eyeliner she's using, because her makeup did not move. It was perfect the whole time. She crashed on a planet. She wept. She was eaten by she was like, I'm sure she dealt with the stomach acid of that worm thing. She
Not
got
to
beat
mention the
up.
blood of the Andorian inside of it.
Yeah, what else? I took some notes about what other stuff she went through. She
transported into
she
a
went
lake
into
at
that
one point.
Yeah, she ended up in that ocean thing.
Okay,
Yeah, and every time
that
she got
actually
looking
would
great.
probably kill you. Like, let alone her eyeliner. If you are like up on a cliff with low air pressure and then transporting underwater with a high pressure, and like surely your veins would collapse. Like,
Yeah. Also, I thought
Of course.
when he pulled her off the cliff, I thought for sure he would be like, hold your breath, because if you come out on the other side and land in an ocean, you might gasp, and then we're in trouble.
I think you said like you're gonna hate me or something like that.
Yeah,
You could
yeah.
better use those syllables in that.
Yeah.
you're gonna be angry.
You're gonna be angry.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, hold your
Transporting
breath.
underwater. Yeah.
Oh my. Well, I mean, we've talked about so much. Is there anything that anyone wanted to mention before we go? I actually do have one thing. My favorite piece of trivia from the episode was that Liu, who portrays Book's cat Grudge, was apparently a one-take wonder on set. We didn't talk about the cat. How cute was Grudge the cat?
Oh my god. What a name for a cat. Like, so excellent. You learn so much about Book in that one moment. Like, we learn like early on, before he's revealed to be an environmentalist, he's already got this strong relationship with an animal.
We know he's a cat person, which immediately sent him up 10 points in my book.
And conversely, that alien who wanted to kill the cat, straight to the bottom of my book.
Yep, yeah. Amen.
But they also said, like, that's a big cat. That's a big, oh, wow, that's a big cat. And I was like, that's not that big a cat. Like, I don't know what that was all about. Are cats in the future really skinny? Are they really tiny?
Well, that
maybe
was a Maine Coon.
Maybe everyone on the planet is quite small. We just can't tell.
Ah, I see.
One thing that I wanted to ask to see if anybody else knew. So we all know what the Bechdel test is: two women speaking about something, two named women speaking about something who's not a man. Has Star Trek ever passed the black version of that, which is two named black people not talking about a white person?
Does
I would
Guinan and LaForge.
Damn it.
And LaForge.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
Guinan and LaForge.
There were some really, I have to say, there were some really interesting moments throughout TNG, having watched it, you know, in the where there are spaces that are non-white in that way, and that was in the early '90s. It was well executed, the way they covered that. But Guinan and LaForge had really great moments in Star Trek TNG.
I have some Guinan trivia.
Oh, please.
I hope. Well, you'll have to check me and cut this out if I'm wrong. But
no, we won't.
The actress played young Guinan in at least one episode.
Yeah.
She is also the same actress who played the younger version of Whoopi Goldberg in Sister Act. So when she's in school and she's reciting the Apostles, but she just says the names of the Beatles. That's the same actress.
The
That's
TNG
incredible.
episode is called Rascals, by the way. That's the TNG episode.
I love that. I mean, Whoopi Goldberg participating in Star Trek, like, you know, she like wrote them up and was like, I will be in your show. And they thought it was a joke because it was like peak Whoopi Goldberg in the 90s. Like, you know, they couldn't have booked her if they tried, but she knew what a like important show it had been for representation. And they gotta let her reprise the role in Star Trek Picard. And anyway, that makes sense to me that they just take the same actor that she was working with, because she like directed herself onto that set. So she would probably just bring whoever she wanted because they were so thrilled to have her involved in. One more thing for me to note. The last like 5 minutes was extremely heavy on the like queer allegory level, because we had Book talking about how he was ostracized for being different from his family. And then we have Burnham saying, our numbers are few, our spirit is undiminished. If there are others out there, we will find them, which is, ripped straight from the Queer Experience rulebook. And Star Trek I've got all of my criticisms about how it's failed over and over to have actual, textual representation of queer people that isn't tropey. And we're hopeful that this season we're going to do that. We know we have at least one trans actor and one non-binary actor who are joining the cast. So hopefully we might even get a trans Bechdel test moment, which would be nice.
Wow.
Because I don't know if I've ever seen that happen ever.
No, this is going to be an exciting season of TV all around. I'm really looking forward to the rest of what the writers and directors have to offer for us.
Yeah.
Well, I think...
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, I think with that, unless anyone has anything else that really needs to be said, it might be time to wrap up.
Let's do it.
Thank you, Kat, for joining.
Yes.
Oh, thanks for having me. This was fun. We're all staying at home. I'm in quarantining right now, so I can go visit my parents. So we're all looking for stuff to watch. So I'm happy to have the task.
Are you going to keep watching this season?
I was hoping you would not ask me this question. No,
That's
maybe.
a no.
Maybe.
Well,
I did really like this episode of characters, so we'll see.
I'm curious to know if your parents are watching, and perhaps we'll have your dad on as a guest at some point. So I think that would be really fun.
Yeah, I'll ask him. I think that they have watched it. My dad likes to keep up with. He's watching Lower Decks, so he's definitely aware of what's happening in terms of new seasons. I forgot to mention that I did want to say this on the show. Ronnie already knows about this, but I was on vacation with my family when I was a kid, and I think we stumbled upon a Star Trek convention. We didn't go to one specifically, but there was one near us. So I have this photo from that time where I'm in a photo with my parents, my brother, my aunt, and a Romulan, a Vulcan, and a Klingon. So I'm just going to put it on the screen now, and maybe they can put it on their social media if they want to. But
We will, for sure.
My
You
God.
have to send us that.
Is that
Please send
Kira
us that.
Nerys?
Is that actually the actor who plays?
I think two of them are cutouts. And the Klingon for sure was real, and he did bonk me on the head with.
Oh my gosh. Well, you can't top that, folks.
What a way to end the show.
Yeah. Kat, if you want people to follow you on social media, how would they find you?
You can find me at OutLoudCat with a everywhere.
And Ravi?
I am at Ravi G. Joshi on Twitter.
And Ronnie?
I'm at RonSly, RNSLY.
And I'm Shane Came Back, and you can follow us at Worse Than Borg on Twitter and Instagram. You can email us at worsethantheborg@gmail.com. And please don't forget to like us, give us 5 stars, and even review our podcast on your favorite podcasting platform. For now, this is Captain Shane signing out. Thank you so much for listening, and have a good one, folks.
See you next episode.
Do you guys have a theme song?
We're going to momentarily.
Oh!
I'm going to stop recording and